Hello, and it's the CC podcast, as we say, just before Christmas. First of all, just wishing everyone a really good Christmas, and thanking everyone who's involved with connecting consciousness, whether you're a member, whether you're a volunteer, whatever your role is. Thank you for doing that. I wanted to do a quick update because there have been certain developments occurring on the mainstream news, and I have to say the mainstream news because that's what matters, in the sense that if they're carrying the news, then they clearly want the vast majority of people to pick that up. But it's also a way of sending out signals, shall we say. Now, cast your mind back to when the great cathedral at Notre Dame burned down, and it's a number of years now. And I seem to remember something about very suspiciously people doing welding or something burning up in the cathedral roof and the whole place catching fire. It sounds rather like the Reichstag in 1933. But anyway, it burned down. And for many of us, it was a symbol, not as portrayed in the history books as a religious honor to God, but more of something a little bit more dark and connected to otherworldly energies. And I think that that fire, the burning down of that icon of evil, I'll use that word, wasn't just by chance. So here we are, a number of years later. It's been rebuilt, and not only does President-elect Trump visit it, but also the future King of England, and not Charles, who is the king, but William, who is the future King of England. And those of you who have listened to me and have been able to remember some of the things that I've said, I've often talked about the fact that the White Hats can do business with William. And indeed, when the Queen was alive, it was William that they would hold their meetings with. And they've completely sidestepped Charles. They don't have any dealings with him at all, apart from, publicity, pictures, etc. So it was no surprise that William went there, because it wasn't just that they were going to have secret talks. It was much more about the symbolic effect of the royal line from England attending, with the new political line with Trump. And there are other leaders there as well. But that's a really key turning point. And the bells were rung, and anyone who knows about sound frequency knows that certain frequencies, certain sounds are very healing, energy sounds, and also can deter evil entities. And so although the cathedral was rebuilt, it wasn't rebuilt in the same style and the same way. There were certain changes to it. Many of those have remained secret and won't be let out to the mainstream news. Those bells meant something, and I think one other person picked up that when, let's just call him President Trump. I'm struggling with President-elect Trump, 45, 46, 47th president. When he opened the New York Stock Exchange, he held the button for around about 17 seconds. Quite difficult to be exact, but he was supposed his choreography to hold it for 17 seconds. So the symbolism hasn't all just ended because he won the election. It's still there. We've got to look for it. Now, I'm going to jump to the RV because it has a great relevance to Notre Dame. For many people, that's perhaps not obvious. For those of you who don't know, the RV stands for the revaluation of currencies. And even when President Trump was a very young man, before he was even interviewed by Time magazine, I think, he'd formulated in his mind that it was very difficult for all the countries of the world to trade if their currencies were vastly different. So if one United States dollar bought 4,000 Iraqi dinar, how could you ever really sit down and do an equal trade with any organization? You couldn't really. So he always had it in his mind that would empower countries. And that's always been a thread through. But you have to back country's assets with something. And for years and years, the United States was backed by oil, and it was the go-to currency, still is the go-to currency, and probably will remain the go-to currency. It's the very important dollar. And those of you who did take the trouble to look into the small print, you would have seen a few days ago that President Trump castigated some of the BRICS nations for talking about creating their own currency. And there's been some confusion here. A lot of CC members thought that he was saying that he didn't want an asset-backed currency. That's not what he was saying. What President Trump was saying was he didn't want another euro. He didn't want a group of countries joining together to bring out a new currency to challenge the dollar. President Trump has no problem with countries strengthening their own currency, providing that it does not challenge the dollar. And if it's to be stronger than the dollar, that must be agreed with the people who, run America. You can't just go and do these things. That would be childish to think that anything like that could ever happen. And so his words of admonishment for the BRICS nations, because perhaps it was India, can't be sure, but one of the BRICS countries was floating the idea that perhaps those nations could get together and create their own currency to challenge the dollar. And that didn't go down well at all, and is dead in the water. And so in order to back something, you have to back it with assets. And I know that a lot of people who perhaps misunderstand, and I'm not being disrespectful or rude or condescending, but there are a number of people who commentate, don't have the experience, don't have the connections, and they misunderstand. And they've talked about the United States fiat dollar being backed by oil. But they do forget that that's still an asset. The oil is an asset. Now, obviously, in America's case, it was being backed by oil from Saudi Arabia and other countries. It wasn't just coming from America. So what's turning, shall we say, the circle is turning, that those assets must be country bound. And it can be gold, it can be silver, it can be platinum, it can be diamonds. But Iraq can asset back the currency with Iraqi oil, with the Iraqi deal, which is really a linchpin of the RV. There were lots and lots of false starts with people declaring that it's on the 4X and the lights are blinking, or they're gone blue, or they're gone grey, or a whole host of utter nonsense. The reality is that when it goes, it goes. We'll only go on a mosque day, and then it has to be gazetted by the legal side and the mosque working together. And what we're seeing is assets being returned to countries very quietly. Britain has been very quietly returning some assets, because if you had, say, for instance, the Mona Lisa as a painting, that actually is an asset, and it will be insured. And you could back your currency against the Mona Lisa. Nobody's even thought about that, but you could. And question, I think, is for those of you who are really, really red hot and been watching very carefully, what is the asset that's just been returned to Notre Dame? It was not returned on the day that Trump and William were there, etc., because that would have taken the thunder away from what they had to do. But it's we can't say 100%, but it's believed to be the crown of thorns that Jesus wore on the day of his crucifixion. So that has been returned from a very secret source, and is returned to Notre Dame, where it's to be lodged. Now, that is a historical asset. Those of you who really do understand the RV know that historical assets aren't just golden guns or golden dragons or golden cities or German bombs. They can be a whole range of artifacts. So historical artifact, historical asset. Now, whether it would be correct to try and asset back a currency from a religious icon, I really couldn't say. But what it does show is that certain important objects are now being returned to where it's considered the proper place. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the owner can't say that France is the owner of that. But it sure as heck didn't go to the Vatican, and that's a really big, interesting call. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the Vatican would have had that straight away. Thank you very much indeed. We'll put that in the 17th floor down below, etc. But they haven't done. What they've actually done is put it into Notre Dame. Whether the original will be locked away and a replica will be put on display, or whether it won't be displayed at all, I don't know. But of necessity, countries are now receiving back from a very, if I call it a shadow organization, I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean not observable by the general public. So a secret society, let's just call it that, which has had in its stewardship a large number of artifacts or sacred objects, as they prefer to refer to them, and these are being returned, or some of them are being returned, not just to the rightful owner, but to the rightful resting place where it's agreed. And that's a really important point, that assets, historical, are going back to countries. But in many cases, they won't even be advertised. So that I wanted to bring that, because that's really no one's really picking up that. Well, why would they? They just wouldn't see the relevance of it. The story is growing about the unidentified flying objects or aerial vehicles over certain parts of the United States. And you've probably seen that the White House made an official announcement saying these were airplanes or manned vehicles. They wouldn't even call them drones. They were manned vehicles. But the photographs that have come out from Reuters or other, organizations, not just my best friend in his backyard taking a picture, but from, these big organizations. When you look at them, if you have experience of this type of aerial vehicle, it's very clear that it's not an aircraft. It's not. There's no way it is. And the pushing away by the current administration isn't going to work, because it's creating more questions than it's asked. Not so long ago, a few days ago, a number of unidentified craft over the Capitol building, just as there were right back all those years ago. And it's a very, very interesting nod back to that. And then over certain places, some military bases, actually American military establishments, there have been these flying, also other parts of the United States. And let's hope that connected with Netflix or any other films that are now coming out trying to reignite the discussion might help to move it forward. Chatting to somebody who was involved recently in the House discussions. From time to time, the House gets together and there's a committee that wants to hear these reports. But generally speaking, the whole object of this is just to present to the general public that the matter of UFOs are being discussed. There's no intention of taking it anywhere. I know some of the people I've spoken to were very disappointed because they felt that they were disrespected. The evidence wasn't given the full weight. But what did they expect? They were under orders to put some daylight onto the fact that the government was discussing UFOs, but they were not authorized to actually do any more than that. So we'll just see it as another step forward. Kerry Cassidy has always said that, from her whistleblowers, she picked up that there was a slow but steady movement for what, is often called soft disclosure. But it moves at the speed of a snail. But the reality is that I think with the new presidency of Trump coming in, this new administration, I think I know he would be more open to this topic. But again, the question is national security and what's the atmosphere, what's the temperature in the United States, and how relevant would it be? But I think as part of Nasara Jasara, it has to have some more airing, and we should expect to see some more useful information. I don't know about you, but I'm heartily sick of bits of paper with big black lines through it, what they call the redacting of a document, so that you get, dear Mr. Smith, thank you. And all the rest is just, what is the point of that? It's absolutely useless. So for all the, Freedom of Information Act wanting that, that's all just nonsense. The reality is that if the president authorizes key flag officers in the Pentagon to release certain items or push in a certain way, then that will happen. But there's always a big movement to try to disclose, but not fully. But I take that as exciting. I think that we've got a lot of aerial phenomena. We've got stuff going on TV channels and a debate in the House, no matter how low that debate might be. But the reality is that it's back in the psyche of people who don't believe. And the whole object, remember, of all of this, these last 4 years in particular, that we've all suffered under, was really to get to those people that don't believe on a whole wide range of topics and attempt to do it. Let's see if President Trump does ban fluoride from the drinking water. Let's see if every vaccination in America is given an independent medical test, not run by the pharmaceuticals, but run by companies that Trump will choose. Let's have a look and see what is announced to the public. And so the situation with unidentified flying objects is no different as a topic from everything else, in as much as the truth is definitely not being shared, but is different in a way because of the ramifications it has for national security. Things like, other objects such as injection or inoculation, or the tax of this, or gun running of this, or the money laundering of that doesn't have such a huge impact. And we would look at, say, the Ukraine war, the war between Russia and Ukraine. And again, all we're being shown is what we're meant to be shown. And there's a long story about missiles being fired, what can be intercepted, what can't be intercepted. But the reality is that 3 countries on the earth possess the technology to down any missile, even the hypersonics traveling at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,000 miles an hour. So there's an awful lot of stuff, which I hope in the next 4 years will come through. So no stock market crash then, no banking crash then, no EBS then. Trump got in as we expected without any difficulty whatsoever. The votes were just counted right through and there was no issue. And everyone who was predicting that there would be blood on the streets, well, they were wrong, weren't they? Number of people saying that Trump is going to come back before the 20th. He's going to arrest all the Congress, this, that, and the other. Doesn't need to. It doesn't need to. The only weapon that Trump might consider using would be he has in his possession details which could remove 5 or 6 members of Congress. And that's probably, if he had to do that, that's probably all he would need. You only need a sort of 7-8 majority to be fairly sure. But you need a small majority in Congress politically at the moment, because it is the Congress guys in the southern states who are very, very supportive of Trump. And there are still a lot of people there who would like to play a different game. So don't be worried about a small majority in the House. That is actually designed for it. And the Senate's more important. That's an important one to have. So very happy, of course, that we're going into Christmas with a new administration on the way. I'm not going to talk about, the timing of the RV. Unlike lots of people who say they've got NDAs, but haven't really, I do have an NDA, and I can't talk about it, and I won't talk about it because why would I? So from Becky and myself, we want to thank everyone in Connecting Consciousness for all of the effort and the hard work that you've put in over this year. We really do appreciate everything you've done. And it's ongoing at the moment, with some of the states working with Tyson, the frozen food company, who have donated thousands of pounds in weight of meat to be distributed to veterans in the United States and to the hurricane afflicted. Connecting Consciousness has raised over $100,000 for relief for some of the states, the communities that have been damaged. And, we're not waiting and sitting for the RV to land on our laps and then, we've got all this money, let's go and do some good. Connecting Consciousness has people who want to do good now, not just waiting for a windfall. So to all of those of you who have worked with the sheriffs, I know that you have, you've got the warehouses up and running, you've had to get in extra refrigerators for all the meat, to the governors, and we can't mention them because they're not supposed to be involved publicly, but those governors who have been involved, and you know who you are in the US, thank you for what you've done to make that work. To the group of sheriffs, thank you for that. Not one donation that we have raised went to FEMA. Not one donation that we've raised went to any group that we weren't okay with. It went to the individuals concerned. So Connecting Consciousness is not just a place where people sit around and chat. It's where they get out. We've done other things in other countries as well, but that's not about this. This is just to say thank you very much to everyone who has done something to help your neighbor. And that's truthfully what we're about, what we should be about. So from everyone, from the team, top team, to everyone, no matter who or what you are, that'll be a cat that has literally decided that he wasn't prepared to wait for the turkey any longer and has decided to knock the turkey off the top. So, they're clever. Animals are clever. This one behind me is probably in charge. She just sits there and organizes it all. And, well, she's got the greatest alibi because I was on the screen while he was doing the podcast. I'm not guilty. Right. So listen, God bless to every country, everyone, whether you are Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or any faith. Have a great time. Happy Christmas to the Christians, a great resting time for everyone else, because Christmas should be a time when we are at least, as friendly and helpful and as loving as we can be. And as in the Scrooge, Charles Dickens, the Christmas Carol is try and do it 364 days of the year. So we are reminded of Christmas Day that we're supposed to be really good. But let's try and do it. Not like these people that drink heavily in December and then say, I'm having a dry January. I'm going to go without. I mean, it's just nonsensical, isn't it? Let's try and do good throughout the whole year and give it our best shot. All right. Thanks ever so much. Take care.